My name is Sudanti Narendran, and I have the pleasure of presenting the strategic plan for increasing the Indigenous student attendance rate at Spearwood, Janjibab, and Belay primary schools. I would first like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we live. I pay my respect to the elders past and present, and extend my respect to any Indigenous people here today. In Australia, from 2001 to 2016, the attendance rate of Indigenous students in primary schools increased by 36.7%, and the proportion of primary school students has remained stable. However, compared to the attendance rates of Indigenous and non-Indigenous students, the Closing the Gap Report 2020 indicates that in 2019, there is a significant gap in attendance. It worsened throughout secondary school. Despite a 5-year government intervention plan to reduce the attendance gap by half, this target still needs to be met. More qualitative data is needed to determine why these consistent gaps exist between Indigenous and non-Indigenous students compared to the national average. 3 similar socio-economic index schools, Spearwood, Janjibab, and Belay primary schools in Colburn City were analyzed. In 2023, the mean attendance rate was 10.33% between Indigenous and non-Indigenous students. However, in 2018, it was 11%. According to FACI, attendance level is more accurate than attendance rate. These 3 primary schools showed a mean attendance level difference between Indigenous and non-Indigenous students of 36% in 2018, whereas the attendance rate was 11%. If we look at in 2023, the attendance level difference between Indigenous and non-Indigenous students was 26%, whereas the attendance rate was 10.33%. It is implying that the attendance level disparity is greater than the attendance rate. Furthermore, Belay Primary School was analyzed, showing an attendance level difference in 2023 of 18%. It is greatly improved when compared to Spearwood and Janjibab primary schools. The Belay primary schools, Indigenous students significantly had 0 gaps in attendance level from 2018 to 2023. This is a significant improvement. Yet the other 2 schools have 12% less attendance from 2018 to 2023. Further research showed that the Belay primary school leads the way in embracing Indigenous culture. Common reasons for poor attendance include curriculum relevance, cultural differences, caregivers' education and expectation toward education, health, educational disengagement, socio-economic status, intergenerational trauma, peer pressure, bullying, and self-confidence. Hence, a strategic plan must uncover factors affecting Indigenous students' lower attendance. Quantitative data from My School website fails to present these reasons for students' absence and only collects attendance reports. Quantitative data such as family relationship and culture also impact Indigenous students' absences. The reasons for Indigenous students' absences at these primary schools will need to be collected to plan how to encourage Indigenous students best to attend schools regularly. Vision for the strategic plan. It is important to develop a nationwide database to assist Indigenous students in achieving attendance rates equal to non-Indigenous students. Using Eastern cycle of inquiry, the data has been studied and the issues of lower attendance rates have been identified. An evidence-based solution will be recommended by continuously monitoring the progress of the data to ensure that the implemented solutions are effective and have the desired impact, or if any other solutions are required. Also, it will ensure that the Indigenous students feel a sense of identity and their personal needs are supported. Principles that will guide this strategy. Eastern cycle of inquiry allows data-driven decision-making at each stage. Creating a partnership between schools, students, families, and the community opens channels to multiple viewpoints and communication, where quantitative and qualitative data will identify factors impacting Indigenous students' attendance levels. Also, comparing the local and national data can help teachers and caregivers achieve more accurate, objective, and reliable decisions and help them feel confident about supporting their students. Key values that will form the foundation of this strategy. It is important to keep students' collected data confidential and secure. A safe school environment that saves each student's livelihood and ensure a connection with education despite any arising challenges to ensure the values of safety, trust, self-esteem, equity, and belonging. Indigenous students must access a cross-cultural environment by incorporating Indigenous culture and language and teaching to ensure the value of identity, diversity, respect, confidence, inclusivity, and accessibility. Maintaining high expectations for Indigenous students while supporting their educational goals to ensure the values of independence, support, competence, and achievement. Furthermore, everyone should be heard through responsive, transparent, collaborative, and open communication, which builds strong partnership between the community and educators. Goals and objectives. Australian government research indicates that attendance in primary school years is more important than subsequent years. Therefore, attendance issues for Indigenous students should be addressed as early as possible to improve their chances of academic success. Indigenous students increase attendance levels yearly with a 5-year target of closing the gap by reviewing each term. Schools shall collect and analyze quantitative and qualitative data on Indigenous students' absence and submit weekly to a national database to identify services and support, such as transportation. Educators instill Indigenous culture daily by utilizing Indigenous teaching methods and reviewing them weekly. The strategic plan suggests ways to address the poor attendance issues at Spearwood, Janjibab, and Belai primary schools. Focus areas. Coburn is a local government area in Western Australia with 1.9% of the population identifying as Indigenous. Spearwood, Janjibab, and Belaya primary schools' Indigenous students' populations are 21, 8, and 9%. Even though the index of community socio-educational advantage value of these three schools is mostly similar to the other Western Australian urban schools, the attendance level for Indigenous students at these three schools in 2023 remains significantly lower. Around 50 to 65% of the Indigenous students at these schools do not attend the school for 10% or more of the 2023 school year. And this is a constant trend in previous years too. According to the research, when Indigenous students are absent for more than 10% of schooling, they cannot achieve the minimum standard of numeracy. It will negatively impact their academic success and future well-being. Therefore, it is important to plan strategies to find out the reasons for the poor attendance of Indigenous students at these schools as early as possible to improve their chances of academic success. Educators instill Indigenous culture daily by utilizing Indigenous teaching methods and reviewing them weekly. Action plan. With Eastern cycle of inquiry's first two stages, it is important to implement evidence-based strategies such as place-based strategies like empowering Indigenous educators to support and act as a role model for Indigenous students. Also, we can consider incorporating a connection strategies to ensure reconstruction of relationship between Indigenous students, families, communities, and educators. According to remote school attendance strategy, case managers will identify Indigenous students' parents or caregivers and establish a trust to work together to communicate the issues and collect initial data, such as family needs and health, before students start the school. The third stage of Eastern Cycle of Inquiry requires continuous monitoring. During the school days, a mentor program will be established. Indigenous community members meet students regularly to maintain a connection by respecting their cultural values, reviewing new attendance issues, and providing additional support in a culturally responsive way. Educators could incorporate 8 ways of teaching Indigenous students in the classroom. Additionally, embracing a First Nations culture into the classroom in Spearwood and Janjipa primary schools create a sense of belonging. This has already been introduced in Belai Primary School, where Indigenous students' attendance rate is higher than these two schools. The fourth stage of Eastern Cycle of Inquiry is using the research to analyze the impact of solutions and programs. This will help the national database to achieve this by identifying the attendance level of Indigenous students each school term and will aim to close the gap within 5 years. Furthermore, this will help to improve education by using the other approaches and policies to identify requirements. Strategic plan aims to improve attendance for Indigenous students within 5 years. This involves creating culturally inclusive learning environments, awareness, and relationship with Indigenous students, families, and communities to monitor absences and reasons. The strength of this strategic plan is identifying factors prior to resolution. Continual data is gathered through mentorship programs revealing new attendance barriers. Data will be monitored for each term, yearly, and 5-year period. The national database will acquire information to review specific services and support to see if this cohort's attendance level continues beyond primary school. In safe cross-cultural environment, trustful collaborative partnership built between schools, students, and Indigenous communities will increase attendance. Thank you.